What's up, guys? Episode number 8 of the Foreign Exchange Podcast. I've got Tamiem, I've got Aaron, and we're very excited for this particular episode because we have our first guest. So we have Kelvin joining us. Kelvin is running for the Texas House of Representatives as an independent, and I think just as context, we've talked about the local DFW area quite a bit on our podcast, particularly on the earlier episodes, and we've had a few of our clips go viral on social media, and that's kind of how we got connected. So Kelvin reached out. I think his mission and his objectives kind of align with the things that we're talking about, where we are. And we figured, let's get on the pod and kind of talk about it. So we appreciate you joining us.
I appreciate you guys having me. This guy went viral. Had to reach out and at least throw a shot in the dark, see if I can get on and talk to you guys.
No, it's a huge honor. You're our first guest, so it's nice to have you.
It's great to be here.
Yeah.
So maybe we typically just like catch up and kind of figure out how our week went, but a lot of the times I have this perspective about, anyone in politics. What's your normal life like? Like, who's Kelvin? What do you do?
So I'm an entrepreneur. My wife and I run a mental health facility practice. So my wife is a therapist. She handles the therapy. I handle the business side of it. That's my day to day. I got 2 little boys at the house, so full-time dad as well. I would say my daily life is pretty normal, except for all of the reaching out to different people that I have to do to try to earn their support. And I think as an independent candidate, there's different challenges associated, right? And we'll talk about some of those things as we go on and, hopefully with some of your questions. But it's really about building trust in the community and talking to as many people as you can. So day to day, I wake up, I do my job, I do my dad's stuff. And when I have time in between, I'm doing politics stuff. I'm shooting videos on my phone, trying to get the message out, talking to my neighbors, anything I can do to try to get people aligned on these priorities is most of it. But, most of my day, I'm just living, trying to survive out here like everybody else.
Yeah. And just real quick, if somebody wants to connect with you or follow you on social media, so what platforms are you on?
I'm on TikTok, Facebook, X, or Twitter. And that's pretty much the main ones that I'm on. I have Instagram, but in all fairness, I'm not great at Instagram. I don't really understand it. I know people want slideshows, and I don't have a whole lot of time to make slideshows on Instagram. So I repurpose my TikToks for Instagram, but those would be the main 4 that I'm on. I also started a Patreon, which is totally free, so that people that are in the community can join there. And what we'll do is we'll do polls. I really want this campaign to result in a more educated, a more informed and involved community. And I think the only way you can really know what the people want is if you ask them. Yeah. You can assume all you want. You can go down to Austin and make all the assumptions that you want, that everybody's on your team. But I think that's the mistake that a lot of our politicians that are currently in Austin, they make. Is they just assume that because they won an election that everybody agrees with them on anything. So one of the things I've started, and it's not grown yet, but we're working on it, is that free Patreon community, just where I can communicate with the community and have them give me feedback in real time.
Real cool. What areas do you represent?
So we are pretty much the northern portion and the eastern edge of Denton County. So you'll see it right here. I don't know if your viewers will see it, but Sanger, Pilot Point, Aubrey, Krugerville, Providence Village. There's pieces of Little Elm in the Colony and some of Frisco as well. Basically, that eastern line is the line between Denton and Collin County. So I have all of that right there on the eastern portion of Denton County, and then most of the north where it's a little bit more rural, like Pilot Point and Sanger.
That area is growing like crazy. Yeah, so how does it feel representing probably one of the fastest growing areas in DFW?
Oh, well, I'm hoping to represent them. It feels great. It feels great because I think the fun part about this district is it is so diverse, and just, you can drive down 10 miles down the road and you have something totally different. I live in Aubrey, which is like Horse County, USA, right? So there's like horse ranches everywhere out there. And then you go maybe 5-10 miles south and you have this sprawling suburban, kind of jungle that goes into Frisco and everything. So it's good, man. And what I like about Aubrey is it really is a very diverse area. We have a lot of different types of people. Everybody's just kind of doing their thing, and I love it there. That's why I decided to build a house there. I thought it was a great community. There's a lot of potential there, and we're seeing that potential realized in a lot of ways.
I'm glad you said diversity, because where we are, it's not very diverse.
Well, I mean, I think it's important to note that, so this is the first time we're meeting Kelvin.
Yeah.
So this is the first time we're meeting Kelvin in real time. Kelvin found us through a video of ours that recently went locally viral about the demographic changes, particularly in North Dallas, cities like Frisco, Salina, Prosper. Our Salina clip, I believe, was the one, and we can make a reference to it. I think we have it pinned, or if we don't have it pinned, we can have it pinned for people to see. It's still getting engagement, and people are still viewing it. And it's essentially highlighting a population shift, being that we're from Dallas, we're born and raised, Tamiem and I, so we've kind of seen it through our life. But Kelvin, how long have you lived in the North Dallas area now?
I moved here in September 2021.
So you're in the past, so you're still relatively new, right? So then what drove you to Dallas? Like, tell us a little bit about your the kind of who you are, where you started, where you were born, and like a quick synopsis of what brought you to North Dallas.
Yeah. So, born in Virginia. And truthfully, I think I told you guys this before the pod. I've lived all over the United States, in 5 or 6 different states. We moved around a lot when I was a kid. Between my dad being in the military, my parents getting divorced, and just life stuff happening, I was able to see a lot of different parts of the country. Now, about maybe 2014, I decided Texas is where I want to lay my roots. I just like the spirit of Texas, right? It has this idea of freedom and liberties and, kind of toughness, but also this friendly nature. And I visited here a few times with my father-in-law, who, he moved here just before I did. He actually ended up in Austin, but he wanted to get up here. And we came here a few times. I'm like, this is where I want to plant my flag. But it never really worked out for me. I went from Georgia, was where I met my wife. I did high school there. My whole paternal family is from there. So that's what I consider, like, if I had a hometown, that would be it. But from there, I went to Kansas City. I did a few years there. We went to Phoenix, did about 5 years there. And, right after COVID is when we were in Phoenix, and it was time to make a decision. We just had our son. We were living in a 1-bedroom apartment. And it's like, we need to buy a house. We need to get into something bigger. But Phoenix is just priced out right now. Hey, let's go to Texas, because it had already been on my bucket list, and we finally were able to make it happen. I actually found my builder up in Aubrey looking at Savannah. So I came here. I had a list of houses. I looked at one in Savannah. It was like $235 at the time, and I was like, oh, that's not bad. These houses are wooden. I don't know, but we'll see what happens. And I'm pulling out of the neighborhood. I see signs for building down the road. I go there. I talk to Jeff, who is my builder over at Arrowbrook, is the neighborhood I live in. And 2 weeks later, my wife and I were flying out here to put the earnest money down on our house. So, yeah, I always loved the idea of Texas. And when I finally got here, it just affirmed the things that I believed about it and what I saw as a place where I wanted to raise my kids and start my family.
Cool. So you were in the military.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service there. And then it looks like you got your master's in business administration. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? Then you started working for National University. Mm-hmm. So what was your role with them?
So I was a director of operations, and I oversaw advising and financial aid. So my main thing, and I just left there last July to focus on the company. Yeah.
With your wife, right? Which it's called the Green Space.
The
I
Green
believe.
Space.
And
yep.
what is the Green Space?
It is. We do marriage and family therapy. It's a marriage and family therapy practice. My wife is the therapist. I don't do that, but I run the business side of things, and she sees the clients.
Awesome. And then you mentioned you also have a family, right? So
yes.
You're a family man.
Yes, 2 little boys.
2 little boys.
I got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Okay, so ex-military. Looks like you worked a little bit, starting out an entrepreneur, working with your wife, family man, a man of faith, from what I understand that I read. Why politics? What made you What made you interested in going into politics?
Well,
specifically local North Dallas, Texas politics.
Yeah, so I have my bachelor's degree in politics. So I've been a bit of a politics nerd for quite a long time, because I think that politics is the way, and when you talk about representative government, it's the way that you can truly get involved to help the people around you and to make sure that, our government is doing what they're supposed to be doing. If you look at my platform, the whole thing is Texans first, politics last. And that's for a reason, because what you see so many times in our society is government that doesn't do what's in the interest of the people. They do what's in the interest of their donors. They do what's in the interest of their party and the platform that their party is set out. And the more you pay attention, the more you see these things, the more fed up and frustrated that you get. Now, the reason that I'm focused on state politics is because that's where the majority of the impact happens, right? I know we like to get caught up in the political theater that is national politics and presidential politics and the Senate and the House and all of those, all of those things that are going on. But the stuff that really impacts you and changes your life or impacts your life either positively or negatively, it happens in Austin. And I don't think enough people pay attention to that. And the things that are on my platform, the changes that I want to make, those are changes that are best for the state level, which is why I think that's the best place for me to serve the community, because there are some corruptive practices that are going on at the state level that I wouldn't even feel right just leaving that behind in order to go to Washington and play that little show, because most of that's theater anyway.
Got it. So correct me if I'm wrong. So you didn't make the ballot in 24 for the general election for the 26 congressional district. It looks like from my research that you ran as a Democrat and then had some kind of falling out. Can you kind of highlight
absolutely
what that looked like?
So heading into the 2024 cycle, again, I've been a politically engaged guy for a long time. I wanted to take a more economically populist agenda to the district. I wanted to make sure that American dollars were being spent on American people. And, I was very focused on the economics. So I put in, I put my name in the hat for the Democratic nomination just because when I was looking at my platform, there's more of an alignment there. I'm more of an independent thinker, but when you talk about trying to get elected, a lot of times trying to run as an independent like I am right now is a very scary endeavor, especially for your first time. You want to have some support. So I would go to these meetings. I would go to, meetings of the Denton County Democratic Party, and I would give speeches. And the speeches would be focused on very popular policies that people cared about, like universal pre-K, right? Like as a father and someone who sees how expensive preschools are, I thought that was something that was worthwhile. Tuition-free public colleges and universities. I had a couple policies on there that I thought were really important. And when you broke down what we were spending on other things and how much these things were costing, I thought this was a worthwhile expense, because I'm more of a fiscal conservative guy in my heart, but I believe in investing. Right, if we're investing in the people, I don't mind spending that money. I think a lot of times people get upset with taxation because they don't see a tangible benefit to their taxes. They send the money, we don't know where it goes. You talk to the government, they audit the Pentagon, for instance, and they can't pass an audit. We don't know what we did with the money. So, that was my platform. And what would happen is, after a few speeches, I got pulled to the side by the chair, and they're like, listen, your platform's great. You're a great candidate. All of that's great. But you're not speaking the language of strong Democrats. So I would, I'm like, all right, what does that mean? Well, listen, we really want, we didn't hear anything about abortion, and we didn't hear anything about LGBTQ plus rights. And I'm like,
dang, so they're already trying to brainwash you.
No, day one, and here's the problem.
So that comes up. So is there a conflict of interest for you because you're really like a faith-based?
No.
Okay.
No, I think that everyone should have the same rights, right? I don't think we should infringe upon anybody's rights. And when it comes to abortion rights, when it comes to female or women reproductive rights, however you want to phrase this particular issue. The problem that I have with what happened in Texas is we did not get a policy that was representative of what the people wanted, right? My whole ideology, if you look at my platform, is let the people choose. Citizen-led ballot initiatives is one of the things that I'm fighting for, specifically because we need the right to choose, right? If like with both of my kids, I didn't find out that my wife was pregnant until way after 6 weeks. that's what we got here in Texas. And then, the language is unclear about what doctors can do to save women. There's a lot of different things. And for me, it's important to let the people have a voice in big decisions, because right now we have a conservative U.S. Supreme Court who's sending a lot of major decisions back to the states. Right. And I think that we should be involved in that process. And I know a lot of people say, well, that's what elections are for. Right. But when you have such a gerrymandered state, and we can get into what gerrymandering is later, when you're in such a gerrymandered state, you don't necessarily have those type of decisions at your disposal, because a lot of our voters are disenfranchised because maybe they disagree with one party or the other. So for me, it's important not that we totally ban or totally support reproductive rights in that way. My biggest thing on that specific issue is I want to put it to the vote and see what the people want.
Got it. So they come up to you, this Democratic-led organization, say you're not speaking the language. Then what happens next? So
I had that conversation at least twice, and then it got to the point where once you realize that these people that are coming and giving me this feedback, they're the ones that gatekeep the money. And if you know anything about running for office, it's expensive. It's an expensive endeavor. You need money for staff. You need money for even having a website. There's a lot of things you need money for. And, basically the idea was you're either going to get on board with our platform or we're going to withhold the funds and we're going to withhold the support. And you kind of need that from your county chair. I only had 4 counties in my district altogether back then, or the district that I was trying to run for. And the guy that ended up winning that race was a Trump-backed
Brandon Gill, right?
Brandon Gill, yeah. He wasn't in the race at that time. It was still the incumbent.
But so you don't get along. You don't tote the party lines,
no.
Right? You can't get the money because of it.
Yeah.
So then you get pushed out essentially.
Yeah.
Right? Then you have to withdraw, and then this guy, what's his name here? Who gets the seat? This Lindengard? Who gets the Democratic seat?
So he doesn't have a seat. He got the Democratic nomination.
Nomination. That's
yeah,
what
I think his name is Ernest.
Ernest. Correct.
Yeah, I never met Ernest.
Ernest Lineberger.
Yeah.
Okay, so then Ernest Lineberger essentially gets the nomination that you're trying to position yourself for.
That I was running for. Yep.
And the reason why you don't get it is because you don't agree with. You didn't want to tote those like company lines. Like you wanted to be more of an independent kind of free thinker.
For sure. So I ended up withdrawing my name from.
So you proactively withdraw your name.
Yeah, I told the county chair and I put the statement out that, listen, I just don't think we're aligned here. And one thing I'm not going to do is compromise what I believe just to get a position or just to get favor with you guys. So, the big thing for me was either I was going to bend the knee and add all of these things to my platform that are important but weren't the things that I was focused on, or, drop out and keep some semblance of my integrity.
So, okay. So then man of character, which we appreciate. So then you're out. So then this Ernest Lineberger wins the nomination, and then Ernest is essentially going against Brandon Gill, correct? So because we weren't following this closely, obviously.
Right.
What did you see that Ernest? What was your understanding of how things played out? Why did Brandon Gill win over Ernest?
By the way, there was an independent nominee as well. There were for that election as well, just like there is for every election.
There's not for every, but I'm not sure if.
But yeah, from what I remember, I believe there was an independent nominee for that one as well.
Well, for the sake of this conversation, he was originally trying to get the Democratic seat. Right. He doesn't get the Democratic seat because he doesn't tote those company lines for the reasons he just explained. So then so you withdraw yourself, and then Ernest ends up being the nomination.
Yeah.
So then Ernest is essentially really going against Brandon Gill. Right. So regardless of this independent, whoever this person might have been, it's essentially Brandon Gill versus Ernest Lineberger. Based off your analysis, why did Brandon Gill win that and hold the seat right now, the seat that you're essentially trying to get?
Yeah, based on what I saw. So here's some things you need to know about Brandon Gill. First of all, this guy's a Wall Street guy. He is from Texas, I think, ultimately. But he came in with a ton of clout. I mean, this guy, I don't know if you guys know who Dinesh D'Souza is.
Yes.
He's married to Dinesh's daughter.
Okay.
Right?
I have seen Brandon Gill on CNN,
Yeah.
which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, so Brandon comes in. He's married to Dinesh D'Souza. He already has a Trump endorsement basically before he ever enters the race. And when you look at, so Brandon, you know, beautiful family, I'll say, but he comes in, he says that he's, you know, this son of a rancher, cattle ranch in West Texas. You know, he goes up, he spent the last few years, I think he went to Dartmouth or something like that. Yeah. You know, he married into kind of this political system, and I'm sure he has some skills. I haven't heard a lot about him. Here's what I do know about him today. The only meaningful piece of legislation he's passed since he's been in Washington is to put Donald Trump on the $100 bill. So I don't know what that means. I mean, let me say he hasn't passed this, but the only meaningful piece of legislation that he has proposed is to put his the leader of the party on the $100 bill. So I think there was a lot of factors that went into him getting elected. It's a heavily gerrymandered district. If you want to pull up, if you can, U.S. Congressional District 26 in Texas, you're going to see one of the most oddly shaped districts that you've seen in a long time.
So this time around, who are you going to be running against? Is it still the same?
I'm running against a man named Jared Patterson.
Okay.
He is, I think, a 4-term congressman from this district. He's been there a while. He's very tapped in with the leadership down in Austin.
And is that a Republican?
He's a Republican.
Okay.
And in fact, in the last session, because here in Texas we do sessions every odd year, so our elected officials truly are part-time, minus like the governor.
You have it on your website as well?
Look at this. That's District 26 right there. That's the district I was running in. And conveniently, do you see how Denton proper is carved out of that district? They sent Denton to vote with like Wichita Falls, and they did that. That's you know, it's a product of gerrymandering. They did that to make sure that the district was like plus 12 or plus 15 in favor of the Republicans. So truthfully, even if Brandon Gill wasn't totally tapped into Trump and, you know, Dinesh and all of those things, he probably would have won anyway, especially if the Democrats weren't allowing, you know, a person that was more focused on populism and economics to run in the race, right? Because they really wanted a white knight for LGBTQ plus rights and reproductive rights, which are important issues. I don't think we should.
They wanted a white knight to go against that, is what you're saying.
They wanted a white knight to like go and advocate for those things, like
the Democratic Party.
The Democrats.
You're saying the Democratic Party. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So, you know, and honestly, when you look at the results of this last election, they would have been better served listening to me, right? People cared about economic policies that benefited them. They wanted the government to spend money on them instead of money everywhere else. That's like the whole premise of the America First policy that's currently, you know, spreading through the nation. So, you know, I think there would have been a lot more opportunity for us to win some of those independent and middle of the road voters back then, but they just weren't interested. They were really interested more in the social issues because they thought that's what was going to galvanize their base. And fine, we had differing opinions. You guys wanted to go a different direction, and you guys got earnest, and Brandon won.
Does it frustrate you that an independent has to start like way behind the start line compared to the Democrats?
Yeah, it does. You know what? I honestly think that we need to move to a world where people win elections with good ideas and not just because they have R's or D's behind their name. Because there's too much pressure on these politicians to bend the knee and do what they're told, right? Like right now, there are Republicans in the state house, right? We have a session going on right now that don't necessarily agree with school vouchers, but they're going to vote for it because the governor's putting the squeeze on them. And you know, when you're a part of that party establishment, you start taking money and orders from them, your perspective starts to change. And the thing I talk about on my platform a lot is I want to be focused on the people that live in the district. I don't really care about what the Democrats or the Republicans put in their party platform, and that's what we're going to do. What I care about is what do the people of this district want, which is a challenge in our district because you have a mix of rural and suburban. So you got to find common ground on certain things. But I don't think that the Republicans or the Democrats today, and that's both nationally and at the state level, are focused on finding common ground and just doing good government. You know, and I think that's a problem. So I do get frustrated by that. I'm not deterred by the fact that I have to jump through all of these additional hoops to get even on the ballot, because I think I have a message that resonates with people.
Cool. So, no, that's good. So I want to understand. So this last cycle with Brandon and Ernest, your belief is Brandon essentially won because he had the connections.
I think he won because he's a Republican in a Republican-drawn district. So the district is drawn to make sure that Republicans stay safe. This is a relatively safe seat in the 26th congressional district. But I think also coming in with a Trump endorsement, totally connected at the top of the Republican kind of hierarchy of things. Dinesh is a big name in Republican circles.
He's got the Indian connection, which is powerful.
Right. For sure. Especially in our district. In his district, for sure. Yeah. But I think there was a lot of factors.
But you're not going against Brandon, right?
I'm not.
So
I'm focused on the state level,
okay.
yeah.
But then, if the Republicans are so set up to be successful in the district, right?
Yeah.
What's how do you get a different result if it's already set up for them? Like, what are you looking to do differently? Well, what's the strategy here?
Well, the strategy is you got to have a ground game. I'm here because this is ground game, right? The strategy is we had 35,000 people not vote. 35,000 people that could have voted in our last election didn't vote. And that's probably because they didn't really see a big difference between the two, or people just don't pay attention to state politics. So the one thing that I have to focus on over the next 18 months is really being in the community and talking to people, which is why I thought your video was so interesting about Salina being, 70, 80% Indian in 5 years. When I go
By the way, we haven't fact checked that.
It might be 90%.
whatever it is.
It was some faculty.
But who's eligible to vote? I guess in the
for
community.
state elections. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think residents, right? I think you have to
as long as you're a resident,
you have to be a U.S. citizen, or not a U.S. citizen, but like a U.S. citizen, or
because if you said U.S. citizen,
you got to
then
be
I'm just
here.
saying, you're losing.
You have to be here
there.
legally.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
If you're a U.S. citizen or you're here legally, you can normally vote in state elections. Yeah, because my father-in-law is a green card holder.
Okay.
He's from England, and he's allowed to vote in the state election. He can't vote for president, but he can vote for his local.
Is it only people who live in the district that can vote for the district? Or
Correct.
So only people who live in your district
Can vote for
the district. So if I live in a neighboring district, I can't vote for your district.
No. So everybody's ballot is going to be different based off of where you vote. So like when you go to like vote.gov or texasvote.gov and you look up where is my polling station, when you get there, your ballot will be different than somebody that lives in the next district over, and it'll be different based on like the House seats and the Senate seats.
So if you're here for an H-1B visa, you can vote.
I don't quote me on that. I'm not an expert in immigration, but I think if you're here legally,
We're about to get you a lot of voters if that's the case.
Yeah.
Or scare them away.
If you're here legally, and we should look that up because I think that's an important thing. But I think if you're here legally, I know that my father-in-law who is here legally, and he can vote on local elections and at the state level. Can't vote for president because I think one of the requirements is being a U.S. citizen to vote for president. But I think at the state level, we do allow people that are here legally to vote.
And again, another thing we could probably look up, but like the last election, what was the winning number of votes? Like,
I have it. Hold on. I think it was
winning and the total number of people
for my
that voted.
district, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I don't think for your district elections, I don't think a lot of people vote anyway. These elections are typically, won by a very thin margin. You're talking like hundreds of votes.
So we had 100,000 voters in the district.
So that's a lot.
He won 60. He had 61,000 votes. The incumbent, and the Democrat had 39,000 votes.
Okay.
So it was about a 60-40 split. But we had 35,000 people sit out. And I think I want to find out who those 35,000 people were. Why are they not voting? And
so that means the total number of eligible voters is 130,000.
It's about 135,000, 136,000 today.
But
right by the election, there'll be new high schoolers that join the voting pool.
New H-1Bs.
Yeah,
A lot of
got to go to the schools, guys. Got to talk to the kids.
Exactly.
90,000 every year.
90,000 every year coming in.
So I think it's important.
We'll get an answer here.
Yeah, in Texas, non-citizens.
Okay, so you do have to be a U.S. citizen. Direct answer looks like you do have to be a U.S. citizen.
What about green card holders? Can they vote, or would you guys say that most people are here on the H-1B visa?
Well,
most people.
Not most, but most of the new kind of wave of that demographic because of the recent kind of shift of headquarters and technology moving in North Dallas. It's tied to that specific demographic that's coming in. That's why we.
But what does happen is once a lot of these individuals come in under the H-1B visa, they through their employer,
They get citizenship.
will file for their green card.
Okay.
But I mean, it's a pretty extensive process. But
Yeah.
maybe that'll reflect, over the
Yeah.
next decade or so. I think India is notoriously behind. Particularly Indian citizens and their H-1B filings are notoriously behind almost 12, 13 years.
Oh, geez.
So
for
do
them to get a
the
green card.
local elections overlap with like larger elections, or is it just
Yeah.
a standalone?
Yeah, so we're going to have elections November 3rd, 2026. On that ballot, there will be a U.S. Congress seat and my seat.
Got it.
So, yeah, there's elections.
So most people just look at the letter and then just check off.
most people really look at like the top three, and then they're like,
Yeah.
RD, yep, let's go
RD,
with that.
yeah.
They'll just vote across like all their parties. They're not taking the time to.
If they're
look
if they're I'm not even really sure. I tend to vote like all the way down and try to know who I'm voting for, but that's someone that got a degree in political science.
But that's also very tough, right? Because
Yeah.
you get so many names that it's
so
almost
many.
impossible to keep up with it. But before we go any deeper, I think one of my personal opinions, and I think, by the way, how old are you, if you don't mind us asking?
32.
32. So you're very young, and probably a few years older than us. The reputation, whenever you say politicians, right, is exactly kind of the things that you talked about. These are people that'll just succumb to whoever's giving them the most money. No ethical beliefs, no principles and morals to say, and even more so in the current political economy, that's turned out to be true. Where, running for an election is just a matter of, like you said, it's just saying whatever people want to hear. But then when it comes to executing on the policies that you said you're going to execute on, it's okay because you've already become a politician. And I think especially state legislature, that's not a place a lot of politicians are looking to spend their political careers in. So it's really just a pathway for them to maybe move on to Washington. And that's the reality, right? You go to any state, legislature, House of Rep, Senate, and that's your pathway to move up to at the federal level, and
stepping
hopefully,
stone.
and so it's really, especially for me, it's really tough to listen to somebody and take them seriously, knowing that, until now the amount of people that have ran, politicians, there's a very small number of people that have really executed on those ideas. And I think I can even go on record and say 90% of politicians, that run for things on ideas don't even execute on it. It's just a matter for them to get elected.
Yeah.
So how do you build that trust back? Like, how do you establish that credibility? And the second part of that question is, it's not you alone that is able to make a difference, right? Even if you're elected, there are so many other people that you have to collaborate with. If you had a challenge in getting elected or getting the representation from the Democratic Party, let's say you do win as an independent, and then you go to the Texas House of Representatives, most of your colleagues are Republicans, very few Democrats there. How do you make a difference at that level anyway?
Yeah, I think that is a really important question. Let's go back just a little bit. When you talk about politicians basically selling out, right? They say they're going to do one thing, then they go and they get caught up in all of the theater and all of the things that are going on in Washington or even in Austin. Yeah, it's a very real thing. The thing that you have to do to build trust is you have to connect with people. You have to have relationships with people. I think the one thing that disappoints me, and the one reason why I really hate gerrymandering as a practice, is because I have never had any of these people that are currently in office ever knock on my door and ask me for my vote. Not one time. That used to be a pretty standard practice in politics. You had people, hey, I'm running for local office, here are my things, door knocking, they just basically rely on the parties. They go, they pitch to the parties put them on the platform, and they have an R or they have a D behind their name. And depending on what district or what state or what area they're in, they kind of just run with that. So that doesn't lead to a lot of accountability.
Just like one quick point on that.
Yeah.
I think that's also, I think, predominantly because of the change in technology, right? It's, before you didn't have the technological resources to be able to go and reach out to as many people. Now, you're on social media, you're able to engage with a lot of people. So I don't know if that's really a sign of, kind of a lack of their desire to connect. Rather, there is a better way for them to connect with their constituents.
Yeah. I mean, is there though? Because like I can put out TikToks, right?
Yeah.
Do my TikToks go to people only in my district?
Yeah.
I don't think so, right? They go out to a more broad population of people that maybe have searched or consume content that is in line with my content, right? I think the important thing when you're talking about doing that, I think that is one of the lost arts of political processes, is the belly to belly, because that's how you build relationships and kind of that authenticity. Because right now you either have the opportunity to build a brand or to build relationships with the community, and I think that's where the dichotomy is. I can post 5 TikToks a day, which I do. I don't know if anybody that's seeing these TikToks even lives where I do. I get a lot of people say, hey, supporting you from Florida. Hey, supporting you from Washington, supporting you from the district right next to yours. So you have to be out in the community. And I think a lot of times what's happening, at least what I've observed, is politicians basically resting on their laurels, knowing that because they're in a safely drawn Republican district, they can just go to all the Republican events. And there's going to be voters that maybe don't go to those events, but are going to consistently vote red every time, and vice versa in a district that's predominantly blue, and they're going to get those votes no matter what. So the goal over the next 2 years is to talk to as many real people as possible, because when I bring these 4 things up to real people, they go, yeah, that makes sense. I don't like that. And I don't think we have enough people that are doing that. So I'm not naive enough to think that this is by any means going to be an easy thing. This is going to be one of the hardest things I've ever done. And it's going to be hard by any metric. But I think to kind of get to your next point, that, if I'm consistent and I'm running on these things and the people send me there, I know that I'm not going to have support from the other people in power when I get there. The hope is that we can put enough social pressure on these people, because we have a platform that people believe in. When like we were talking, when you have enough people that come in and they look at these things and they say, yeah, these are good for the people. They may not be good for the parties. I'll make that very clear now. These policies are not good for the political parties, but they are good for the people, because they put the power back in their hands. And I need as many people in Texas to be on this platform as possible, so that we can start having true self-government in Texas and having a say in the direction of our state, because you have kind of these challenges of, you need to wake people up and make them understand that state government matters a lot more than national government does, especially in a state like Texas. We're basically a country. We have one of, what is it top 15 economies in the world here in Texas by itself.
Yes.
Very important what these people in Austin are doing every day. And then B, you can be involved. You can have a say. You don't have to just take whatever they do lying down. So you go there, no one can stop me from filing a bill. I'll file this bill. And for the people that say, no, we can't do that, you got to call them out. You got to make sure that the people know who is for them and who is against them. So that's part of the game plan. That's one of the reasons why I was like kind of hesitant to start the Patreon, but I'm going to start the Patreon. It's going to be free, because I want to be able to communicate to people in real time what is going on outside of just normal social media, because I don't know who that's going to get to. But if I have all of my voters here on Patreon, I can say, hey, these are the 5 people that are stopping this bill that you sent me here to pass from passing out of committee, or whatever the case may be. You have to call these people out for their corruption. That's part of the process. And I think that's where some of our, more popular, if for lack of a better term, politicians are doing something right. You have the Bernies that went out there in 2016 and called everybody out, even his own party, and people respond to that. Now the parties sank him, just like they're going to try to sink me, but I'm not interested in playing their game.
Scared?
No.
Yeah, worried. So I got a question.
Yeah.
Cowboy hat. Before Texas, did you wear it, or is this a Texas thing for you?
Oh, the cowboy hat is something I adopted when I moved here to Texas. The boots, that's something I've been doing a long time, right?
Okay.
I had a pair of boots when I was a kid. My mom bought me from, I don't know, I remember what it was. They were like plastic cowboy boots back in California. I wore those boots until there was a hole in the sole. And I've always liked boots. And the hat was like the finishing piece for me. It's like the cherry on top. I was like, let me see what I look like in a cowboy hat.
You rock it.
Hey, it looked good, man. I was like, this gangster.
I'm like, how do you miss him at Lifetime? He probably works out with the cowboy.
No, I don't work out.
Yeah.
I'm real incognito
the
at
shoulder
Lifetime.
presses. With the
Yeah, I'm real
Hey,
low
if you
key.
want to win the community, you work out with a cowboy hat at Lifetime.
Dude,
I'm guaranteed.
with your shirt off.
With your
cowboy
shirt
hat.
off.
Listen, I don't know if this thing will take the amount of sweat that I'm gonna produce, right? Because I'm going from
you can
shoulder
sacrifice a hat or two for the election.
Hey, these hats ain't cheap, bro. I ain't got big money like y'all. You know what I'm saying?
So you mentioned before that you really loved the spirit and the culture and identity of like what Texas, is like the Texas pride is very much a thing.
Yeah.
Now that pride in that spirit, it is rooted in conservative politics.
Yeah.
Like that's what makes Texas Texas. So I want to hear from you. What are some policies or things from conservative politics that you do appreciate and that you feel like is consistent with your own messaging?
Limited government, fiscal responsibility, religious liberty. Those are things that I believe in. And if you look at my platform, that's really what it's about. These 4 things that I'm fighting for: citizen-led ballot initiatives, independent redistricting commissions, campaign finance reform, and ranked choice voting are about limiting government and putting power back in the hands of the people, right? When we talk about religious liberty, I was mentioning this earlier. I like how diverse where I live is. Right now, I think there are plans for a brand new Islamic center to be built right off of 1385 in Aubrey. I think that's great. What I don't like about what I see from conservatives here in Texas is them trying to use the government to force one religion or enforce one religion over the other. That's not conservatism. I would consider myself a pretty conservative guy when you look at the spectrum of my political thought. But again, these are the 4 things right here that I think are the most conservative because they put the say and they put the power back in the hands of the people. So yeah, those are the 3 things. I mean, I would say strong national defense as a military guy, but we're in Texas, so it's not really something that's applicable here. But yeah, those would be the conservative values that I'm fighting for.
There you go. Okay, so then on the other side, right, the more liberal kind of democratic side, what are some of those policies that you feel like you can mesh with what you just mentioned as the things that you appreciate about the more conservative side? Yeah,
I think the good thing about I think both sides of the argument have a wonderful kind of core message. Now that message kind of gets lost in the sauce sometimes when they start playing politics, but I do love how committed the more liberal base of political thought are. I love how committed they are to doing for people. Right, I said this earlier in my podcast. I'm willing to spend money if that money is invested properly. I'm not willing to just spend to spend, right? Like I want to make sure that tax dollars are spent appropriately. But like there's a big fight going on in Austin right now about schools, right? We have 2 bills. You have a school choice or a school voucher bill, and then you have basically a public education bill. The Democrats are fighting to get teachers more pay. Yeah, I'm good with that. I think that's a good thing to invest in. If we're going to spend money, spending money on teachers seems like a good way to spend it to make sure that our kids are getting the best education that's possible. So I do like, and I do agree with some of the things that I think some of our Democratic friends are fighting for. When you talk about paid family leave or you talk about universal pre-K and things like that, I agree with those policies because I think it's a good use of the money. Right? As a father and someone who knows that it's basically another mortgage to send your kids to pre-K. Now, if we want to be serious about being pro-family here in the state of Texas, let's be pro-family all the way, even up to and after the kid is born. Give people more options when it comes to how our kids are being raised and our kids are being able to have access to education. I think I would align more with the Democrats on that fight alone. And I think that's the beautiful thing about being an independent is I can look at every issue and just look at the facts, look at the figures, say, do I agree or disagree without any pressure from party leaders or party bosses or big donors to make me go one way or the other. I can look at every issue individually and make, an assessment of it and make a decision based on what I think is best. And then take that back to the people. Hey, this is what's happening here in Austin on my Patreon, right? Here's what's happening. Here's what I think, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what you think. What should we do? Let's have a poll. I think that's to me a really good functioning representative.
No, I think that's awesome. So I want to ask you maybe a little bit more sensitive, provocative questions, and
Okay.
feel free to answer however
Sure.
you want. So
Sure.
you mentioned your faith base. What faith is it that you practice?
Christianity.
So you're a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So as a Christian, what's your perspective on some of this more liberal, like woke leaning kind of politics, the LGBTQ stuff, the stuff that was on this ballot that they prioritize? Like how do you, as a Christian, like come to an understanding of how to, walk that line, and what's your perspective on what they've propped up as important issues?
Yeah, I think in my life, I try to separate government from what I believe, right? So that's one of the reasons why ballot initiatives are an important thing to me, because it's not necessarily, I'm not looking to get elected so that I can tell you guys how to live your lives.
For the viewer that doesn't know what ballot initiative means,
right.
what is
so
it?
So a citizen-led ballot initiative is basically the opportunity that citizens have to push back against their government when their government goes a little too far. We don't have that right. So it's a petition drive, basically. So if you were to, like, say right now school vouchers are not popular in Texas. If we had ballot initiatives, we could be having a ballot float around the state right now to say we want to vote no, or we want to call for a vote, or we want this piece of legislation to be blocked, and the government kind of has to answer to us, right? So it's a mechanism for people to push back against the government or to push forward legislation that they want. And if a majority of the people sign on to the petition, they get enough signatures, they can get that piece of legislation ironed out in the halls of Congress. But it kind of gives the people a way to let the government know what they want in a situation. Because I think what happens a lot of times is what we're seeing now. You have, donors and party officials that are driving the conversations on a lot of major issues, and they're not necessarily seeing what we want. They're not necessarily hearing or care to hear what the people want. They're more interested in passing their agenda. So the ballot initiative will give us the ability to put that thing on the ballot so the people can vote on it.
How's that any different than, like, to me, at least the way I'm understanding this,
Mm-hmm.
is that not the same thing as somebody voting for you because of the beliefs that you have? Like your policies, right?
Yeah.
Let's say the ballot initiatives do exist. And of course, anytime you deal with the government, there's always a long way to get things done, even with, this particular policy. But to me, what I like about the beauty of our government is, instead of going through this long form way of passing something, that's why, you get voted in, because the people that vote for you believe in these policies, and you are responsible for making it happen. And I use you as like a figurative term, but I think that's where the problem is today in our government. I don't think it's that ranked choice voting is really going to make the type of impact that we're saying it will. Ultimately, it's still up to the politicians, because what you're saying is still, even if the people are voting on particular ballots and particular issues to say, okay, this is important to me, ultimately it still has to get passed through legislation. And in order for it to get passed through legislation, the legislature has to agree on it still.
Sure.
Like, people cannot override that just by saying this is what we would like, right?
Well,
so it's just a form of social pressure.
It's a form of social pressure, but it's an official form of social pressure, right? So let's give like an example. Last session, Greg Abbott, our governor, tried to get school vouchers passed. Do you guys kind of remember that, or maybe heard about it in passing?
Yeah.
It was a big fight, big issue. And ultimately, there were like 11 or 12 Republicans who voted against it because they're in rural districts, and this they thought would hurt their schools. So he kept them in special session. So we have a session that's 140 days long, but the governor can call an emergency session and get everybody back to Austin to work on whatever he wants them to work on. He kept them in special session for a long time trying to get this thing passed, and it never did. So what he did was, in 2024, he took $12 million from a Pennsylvania-based billionaire who's a school choice advocate to basically ouster people in his own party to get his way. So yeah, you can send someone to Austin to do the bidding, right? To do your bidding. And you can say, well, elections are official ways for us to confirm or deny that we support this person. But that's where gerrymandering comes in. That's where campaign finance reform comes in. That's where ranked choice voting comes in, because we have representatives right now that are going to Austin to vote against the people, to vote against what the people of their district even wanted 2 years ago, right? So I wish there was a more accountable way to say, like, elections definitely work because we're voting on this, but in a world where half of the people aren't paying attention, they just vote with R's or D's, they don't know what's going on, and they're just kind of trusting that these politicians are going to do what's in their best favor. I think it's really important that we have a mechanism to fight back in real time, because right now we're going to pass this school voucher bill. It's going to pass. And even if it's bad for the state, even if it's bad for public schools, it's going to pass because there's ideology behind it. And we have no mechanism to say we want to recall that piece of legislation. The people have decided we want to recall that.
So if that school bill passes, what does that mean?
So what the school bill passes is basically to do, in a nutshell, is it's going to allow public dollars to go to private schools. That's the big fight. That's where the big impasse is between the parties. Because I don't think anybody really disagrees with school choice. If it's like you can go to whatever public or charter school you want to. The big fight is over: are we going to send public dollars to private schools? And that's what the governor wants. He wants universal school choice. Now there are tiers. There are things. There are pieces of minutia that are involved in this fight. But the big argument between the two is: are we going to really allow public schools or public dollars to go to private schools? But again, this is going to pass. So far, from the polling that I've seen, this is not a popular position here in the state of Texas. The majority of people don't want it, but they're going to get it, because when you have gerrymandered districts, there is no incentive for the politician to be tapped into what the people want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, if you know that you're in a safely drawn R district or D district, you don't really have much incentive to do what the people want you to do. You're going to make sure that the party supports you. You're going to make sure that you do what you're told and that you're a good soldier for the party. And they're going to make sure that they fund your campaign and that you get elected. So, I think to push back a little bit on your point there, these four things are just going to give the people more say in the direction, because right now we have gerrymandered elections, right? So you're basically, when you look at the breakdown of the state, you're always going to have more Republicans in Congress or in the state House of Representatives than you do Democrats, because the lines are drawn to make sure, unless something dramatic, happens and there's a big swing, which they're going to redraw the district lines again in 2030, which is why this is a really important issue for me, because I want competitive districts. I want politicians to be accountable to the people. I'm not saying we need to draw districts that are like, red or blue and make sure everybody has the same amount of districts. I want that to keep communities together, like we looked at earlier. Denton not voting with the rest of Denton County is insane to me. Communities need to be kept together so that they can vote together, because they have shared interests. There are things that are going to impact them that they should be voting together on. And I want districts that are competitive, because I want politicians in their district trying to earn votes. What we're talking about, belly to belly, talking to people, getting people on board, building consensus around a shared platform is really important. So it does matter to the standpoint of right now, they don't really have to answer to us. We can vote them out. But if you're replacing one Republican with an even more conservative Republican or an even more tapped in Republican, did you really get what you were looking for, right? And there's a lot of factors in there, one of them being voter education and voter, engagement. But I think, I don't think elections today, especially not at the state level, are where they need to be in terms of getting us a truly representative government.
Another question that voters may be interested in when putting in their vote, what kind of bold policies other than this do you plan on implementing if you end up winning that will directly sort of impact the communities that you're representing?
Well, I think these are the bold policies, right? Because these aren't policies that the parties are going to like. These are policies that are geared towards the people. And I think the reason that I wanted to keep the main platform small is because when you have 15, 20 things on your platform and you're trying to appease everybody, you kind of get into the weeds where people are asking, well, I have this really specific thing that I care about. Can you talk about that? Right? And I think there's a time for that. And I want to get people kind of bought into this agenda first. And then there will be 4,000 other bills that are going to be filed while I'm there, and I can bring that information back to the district and say, hey, these are things that impact us. And this is why I'm really excited to get to the door knocking and get to talking to voters, because they'll bring up stuff to me that I'm not aware of. Like, one of the things that just got brought up to me is, how can the NTTA basically take people's licenses if they don't pay their toll fees, right? Like, that's a private organization. That's something that I'll look into. There's a lot of really interesting things that are going on, especially in our district, when you talk about the rate that it's growing. Like Aubrey, if you've been to any Aubrey City Council meeting, they're always contentious because the city of Aubrey is starting to build like subdivisions right next to horse ranches. And those people are like, I moved here to, have my ranch. I don't want to be looking at a neighborhood right next door. So I think there's a lot of it like there's a lot of more local issues that I think I'm excited to work on with the mayors and the city council of those people. But these are the 4 things that I am steadfast and focused on, and I'm going to build consensus around these 4 things because these things, they improve everyone's life.
If you take down Big Toll, you got my vote, man. They're fleecing us.
They are, but that's an issue that you want to look into. You want to get more involved.
But then if that's the case, right? If we're making the argument that they're a private organization and they shouldn't have the ability to take away somebody's license, which I agree with, then wouldn't they technically have the ability to put you in jail for trespassing because you're not paying the use of those private facilities?
I mean, they could. So I know it's a public-private partnership now. I'm not going to pretend to know everything about the NTTA. I'm going to keep it real with you.
The tolls are getting expensive, though.
They're expensive, and that's a problem that people care about. And I think, for me, that's something that I can absolutely say, let me put that on the list, see who's already working on that, because I know somebody is. Yeah. And what can we get and bring that back to the people? Hey, this is what we're trying to do with the NTTA. Obviously, a private organization should not be able to take your state driver's license. Yeah. That's insane. But again, I don't know why that decision was made, how it was made. I'm just being made aware of this. But there are a lot of bold issues and bold policies that I'll definitely take up. Those are the main 4. If I can accomplish those things, I'll sleep at night. And I didn't answer your question from earlier, did I? You were asking me like a faith-based question.
I think you kind of got it in a way that's not, going to push any ruffle any feathers. But I want to have some, a little bit of fun.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you a series of questions.
Okay.
And I'll give you 2 different answers, and it's essentially to test your Texan, to see how Texan you are.
Oh, God. Okay.
So state flower, rose or bluebonnet?
Bluebonnet.
Cowboys, where do they play, Dallas or Arlington?
Arlington.
What's more dangerous, politicians or the Heat?
Politicians in my book.
Better sport, football or cricket?
Oh, don't do that to me.
Just say it with your heart, man.
It's football, bro.
Yeah, thank you. Let's go.
I'm a football man.
But what is it going to be in 5 or 6 years?
It's going to be cricket soon. Listen, they got cricket. They got like a cricket league set up in my neighborhood, right? So
why is that not on your policy? Setting up a cricket stadium, you would win.
Because I gotta be honest with you, brother. I don't even really apparently they can't vote. I don't even really understand the sport yet. I mean, it kind of looks like baseball.
Indians, you don't want black people to understand the sport.
Y'all
be kicked out soon.
It's over.
It's probably those Dominicans you really got to
Not
us. We're not really in baseball like that.
I'm going to go to Dominican. You're right. I'm going to go
know what I'm saying? But I'll tell you what,
Yeah,
when I'm
really.
driving through my neighborhood, like maybe every night, like 5 o'clock, you got like a cricket league going on. And I'm like, that's what's up, bro. Like, I want to play, but I don't want to embarrass myself.
What if that's part of your campaign strategy where you just show up to a cricket match and you play cricket?
I will do that.
If you play
I'll be
pickup
honest with you.
cricket,
Pick up,
no,
pick
honestly,
up cricket words that have never
you're
been
gonna
spoken before in my life.
know what?
end up getting
I'm
all
gonna
the
put that on
votes.
the list.
Yeah,
Hey guys,
all the
listen, I'm
votes.
running for
Forget the
Texas House of
NTTA.
Representatives.
This is what we
Yeah.
need you
We
to
need
be
a
doing.
cricket stadium.
That's right.
We need cricket courts.
That's
cricket fields.
We need kids to have access to cricket equipment. They need bats, balls, all of those.
Okay. I'll
Those
put
are
that
the
on
real
list.
problems.
If he becomes a legendary bowler,
What you know what?
Imagine a
What about- what
world-class
about-
cricketer out of Texas. Like, we would be proud of that.
How is I'm interested to see if Salina High School and all these high schools over here are going to get cricket teams. Just consider
it's coming soon.
It's
yeah.
definitely
You think
coming.
so?
It's coming soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen
utility,
it.
huh?
Cricket and chess might be the only sport.
Isn't cricket the biggest sport in the world? Like the most popular?
Not the biggest. It's top 3.
It's top 3 because you got 1.5 billion people in one
Listen,
area of the
Biggest
world.
crybaby fans
Don't-
over me. Too.
Really?
God damn.
Who cares about statistics and data? This is not a
Top
data-driven
3, right?
podcast here.
Top
okay?
3 is crazy.
We don't
man.
talk facts here.
Hey, listen, the
Top
NFL's
3.
growing though. Okay.
Yeah, top.
I wanna
I think
make that clear.
soccer is probably the soccer's
number
number
one,
one. But I think there's another one.
It's like soccer. I know cricket's up there, and then is it basketball? I feel like they play basketball everywhere now.
Yeah.
China is big on basketball.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Are you a fan of basketball?
Love it.
Are you a fan of the Mavs?
Yeah, I like the Mavs.
What'd you think about the recent trade?
I think whoever made that decision should be fired.
Nico, right?
Yeah.
Nico?
Yeah.
Fire Nico?
He's got to be fired. That's crazy. Hey, here's the thing. You
Fire
could have
Nico.
offered that trade to all of the other teams and gotten something way better than the most injury-prone superstar that's ever been in the
Is it
NBA.
Nico or is it the guy cutting his checks?
Well, Nico took responsibility for it from what I saw. So
He took it, or he was forced to take it.
if you're the man that makes the decision, if you're the man that signs off on it, you're the man that's got to be accountable to
But
it.
is it the man who signs off on the checks that makes the decisions?
I don't know who even signs off on the check. I know. Mark doesn't. He's like a minority owner if he has any ownership at all anymore, right?
Yeah, the Adelson, Dumont.
But you know, but
Aaron,
that's
go
it.
ahead and
That's
tell
it.
him
You know
about
what?
Dumont.
I actually respect that answer quite a bit because we were having a debate on this last week on the pod. But I actually respect that answer a lot. Where it's if you're willing to put your name, attach your name to it, then you take accountability.
Listen,
for it.
he did a
I like
conference.
that. You know, and the reason I say I respect that answer is because you in your last campaign you weren't willing to attach your name to a policy and a strategy that you didn't believe in, so you stepped back.
Yeah.
So you know, I think that's the right way to do it. If you don't believe in it, don't attach your name to it.
Well, I saw his press conference with Jason Kidd afterwards, and he said, "Yeah, we made this decision because of X, Y, and Z. So if you're gonna go out there and you're gonna stamp on it,
Yeah, there's no denying he's a sellout, but it's the ugly. it's the ugly. It's the ugly motherfucker who signs his checks. That's the real problem.
listen, the
Ugly.
the final signature was from the ownership group. We know that.
Yeah,
But you as the
exactly.
general manager are in charge of personnel. You're in charge of building a roster, and of all the people you could have traded Luka for, Anthony Davis is not the one.
Well, Mark Cuban just got interviewed recently, I think yesterday, and talked about how he was supposed to be in charge of basketball operations, but essentially Patrick Dumont wanted to go with Nico instead and give Nico really the making power to decide on what happens next. But again, my conclusion is that he didn't want to pay Patrick Dumont, because he has other plans and other interests, which is something else that I wanted to talk to you about.
What?
And it's this casino that is it's not in your district, but it is part of like North Texas. And I think I got some here. Do you have any knowledge of this Las Vegas Sands in Irving, the resort, the proposal, the
I
plan?
have limited knowledge of the casino. I know right now that's one of the conversations that's happening in Austin is whether we should allow gambling to that degree or not. I do know that Texas Sands is spending a lot of money to buy Republican politicians.
Same ownership as Dallas.
Yeah. So if that's the case, it'll probably pass because they're spending the money. My opponent is taking money from them. So
No way.
oh, for sure. He takes money from everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody.
He'll
Listen.
take money from you.
Hey.
Listen, I don't mind taking money from you, okay? But I'm not taking money from a bunch of corporate PACs because that comes with strings,
Yeah.
right? And that's the problem that I have with Jared is if you go through, and you know what,
So Jared is getting checks cut from Dumont as well?
is Dumont Texas Sands?
Yes.
Yeah. You know what? Pull it up.
So Jared is like part of the problem why they
He's
traded
part
Luka.
of the swamp for lack
Jared
of a better
traded
term.
Luka is what you're saying. He's part
Jared
of the reason.
traded Luka, and we got to move him on.
So if you're a Mavs fan, you don't vote for Jared.
Can't
You
vote for Jared, man.
You vote for Kelvin, who
He's taking
didn't
money.
want to trade Luka.
I didn't want it. But listen, you're going to give up, what is he, 28 and 30, 9 and 9, something like that?
Yeah.
That's like 50 points, bro. That's like 45 points worth of just straight up points that they gave up. That's crazy to me. I don't understand it. I really don't
It's the
understand
same
it.
people who's funding your opponent.
Then they got
that
to
made
go.
That decision.
Then they got to go. I love
got
it.
to go.
They got to go.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's the campaign clip.
Yeah.
They
They
got,
got
to go.
to go. Hey,
Listen, I will fight with you against Dumont. And
Listen.
we'll lose the fight.
You
because
got a
he's-
voter. If he was in your district,
I know.
You,
You
got
just want Aaron to vote for you, honestly.
all right, listen, you guys need to come. You guys need to come
Listen,
to Prosper.
I'm gonna
Prosper with
move
me.
to your district for
Come to
this
Prosper
reason.
with
To
me.
vote.
Help
I'm
me
gonna
get
become
into.
Indian,
Help
and
me
I'm
get
gonna
into the
vote.
cricket
I'm gonna
games.
play cricket.
Yeah,
Help
I'm
me
gonna
get into the
become
cricket
Indian.
games.
I'm gonna help him get in cricket.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, help me with that.
So hold on. We are at the 5-minute mark.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we talked about it a few weeks ago in terms of like reaction videos. Love to get your opinion. What did you think about Donald Trump standing in front of the Tesla in front of the White House with Elon Musk and kind of telling everybody to buy a Tesla?
I got to be honest with you. I hated that.
Yeah.
Listen, I like Teslas. Don't get me wrong. I don't have one. But I think when your biggest donor starts having financial troubles and then you basically have a car show in front of the White House, I don't like it. But I also don't like big donors, right? That's not my thing. My campaign, we don't take corporate money. I'm not looking at Mark Cuban as someone who could potentially give to my campaign. I don't really want to deal with that. But then again, if I'm being honest with myself, Joe Biden kind of did the same thing with electric vehicles. I think when it was like Chevy or Cadillac,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
had a
yeah.
bunch of
Cadillac or
cars.
Ford? Cadillac?
I know it was Cadillac,
Cadillac.
but it could have been Ford too.
Okay.
So he had a car show as
Yeah.
well. So it's not one of those things where I'm like, that's, desecrating the White House. If there's a precedent for it, can you really be mad at the guy? I don't personally like it because Elon Musk gave Trump like $100 million and is now kind of like involved in government, but not involved in government. I don't totally mind
No, he's making government decisions and with
right.
Doge,
So
right?
for me, I don't want to see donors have that much power over our president. So that's where I get kind of irritated. But
isn't Doge what Elon Musk doing, taking corruption out of the government? Isn't that like
I
sort
mean,
of
theoretically,
Yeah,
it is. But think about it
theoretically.
like this, right? The first thing he cut was USAID.
Yeah.
Reports came out after the fact that he had also received money from USAID, and they were investigating him.
Yeah.
So that to me seems like a conflict of interest,
It's
right? If we're gonna
inception.
if we're gonna
Who's
be honest,
investigating
Yeah,
who now?
Exactly.
right. So
Investigation inside of an
if we're going to
investigation.
be honest about things, he's supposed to listen. Elon has a lot of government contracts, right? He's doing SpaceX. He's doing electric vehicle subsidies. There's things that he's doing that's in bed with the government.
Well, why do all of his Teslas in North Dallas have student driver tickers on it?
Because we're going to be 70-80%. Listen, one of my good friends.
We got to get you in a Tesla, Kelvin.
Hey, get me in a Tesla,
You gotta
man.
get
Listen,
you
I want to play cricket. I want to be in the Tesla. I really
Yeah.
want to join the community. You know what I'm
right.
saying?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
if that's what it's going to be, let's do it big.
We can
Yeah.
work with that beard, kind of shave it a little, man. Maybe you
Listen,
can
if I
pass.
put on a certain outfit, you can't tell what I
No,
am.
no, for real. Straight up. Straight
Listen,
up.
I am
I'm glad you
ethnically-
mentioned that.
I'm ethnically ambiguous.
So we spent, I think, a good 10 minutes trying to figure out.
What did you come up with?
Who was right? Who was right, Sujan?
I mean, all right, man. I was wrong. That's all I can say.
What did you think?
I thought more on the Hispanic side.
That's
Maybe
fair.
with the hat and maybe
Yeah,
the
with the hat and the
beard.
boots and the
Yeah,
brown
yeah.
skin.
I thought maybe Hispanic.
I
maybe.
thought you were black.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
thought
What
were
about
right.
you?
Yeah, I thought you were black.
So I'm actually black and Korean. My grandma
No
was
way,
from
Korean.
Busan. Yeah.
Oh.
No way.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep. Interesting.
The two words I know from watching Korean dramas. I was about to be like, hello.
My
안녕하세요?
best friend, 4-year college roommate, Korean.
Yeah.
He's going to be a spine surgeon moving to Dallas soon, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I played college basketball, so I have like
Did you?
a whole bunch of
Are
different
you a
types of hooper. I have a whole bunch of types of friends, background
Okay.
with people. Like we have a pretty diverse family.
We got to get you to Ramadan hoops too. I bet a lot of
Actually,
people that.
Where's that at?
Are you familiar with Ramadan Hoops?
I'm not.
So
Is that like a
Ramadan-
league?
Ramadan Hoops is a charity basketball event that happens every Ramadan, which we're currently in Ramadan. The games are essentially every Saturday night because people are fasting. It's after prayer, so it starts at 11 p.m. and it goes to 3-4 in the morning. They do it at the Frisco Field House. A lot of the people who are involved and participate probably do live in your district. Over 600-700 people sign up. 220 to 230 people get approved to play. Every Saturday night, it's essentially a tournament just within the night. They tier each player and put them into teams of 4. There's about 50 to 55 teams, and the winning team wins $5,000 that goes to a charity of choice. So it's all for charity. You pay $25 to sign up. They pool all that money. The winning team essentially signs a check and it goes to a charity. It's a really beautiful event. It's really cool. It was supposed to happen this weekend, but because it's the last 10 days of Ramadan, they essentially skipped this weekend, and the last like Eid weekend they're gonna have it. Maybe I'll coordinate with you and you can attend if you're
come.
interested. It's a
I'm
very
a corner shooter, baby. You know what I mean? That's what's happening.
you could play in it, you could watch, you can decide how you want to participate. But it is a beautiful thing in the district. I guess technically it's not in your district, but people of your district probably.
It's where's the field house at
The
exactly?
field house is like off of Main Street and Tollway.
So if it's on the western side, it's in my district, I think.
It's on the eastern side.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the people that
Yeah,
that
they
would
probably
be playing there.
Listen,
yeah.
I'd love
I'm
to
sure they
come.
cross the
Anytime
border.
we could play
Yeah.
basketball and maybe talk a little politics, I'm down. I
Yeah.
play at Lifetime. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
if you do, but
No. I'm usually just lifting weights.
Yeah, no, it's fun. So
where did you play college hoops at?
I played at Austin College. It's a small school.
Okay.
North of super north, right before you get to Oklahoma. It's in Sherman, Texas. So I mean, I'm a Texan through and through. Went to school all the way, college in Texas.
Okay.
Brother went to SMU. Born and raised, spent most of my life here. I'm also 32, so we're the same age.
Hey, there you go, 92.
92, yeah. So a lot of probably shared experiences in life. Like I'm also interested in politics. That's why having you on what was exciting, just to see kind of your experience so far and kind of the challenges. And, it's been cool for us to just hear you discuss the things, because clearly you're passionate about it, and you really just care about the everyday person. And I think local politics gives people an opportunity to actually vote on things that are going to impact their day-to-day lives. And I don't think most people really understand that, because they get lost in this game of politics and these teams and red versus blue. Yeah. And then you're swallowed by the policies on those teams, even if you don't feel like, you maybe, that's why I asked you earlier, like, what do you like about this side? What do you like about that side? Because I think a lot of people are somewhere in the middle where they believe in certain boundaries. They don't want as much government in their life, but they also believe in kind of the being empathetic towards minority groups, or having, being a land of opportunity to give people a chance to, prove themselves. And that happy medium, I think, is an interesting space to live in, but it's obviously a challenging space, because you're not getting the donors, you're not getting the money. You have to kind of play the game in order to be a part of the game. And when you're trying to be a part of the game from the outside, looking in, which you're essentially doing as an independent, it is very challenging. That's why we were interested in having you on, to kind of showcase that, there are people here that actually do care about, the everyday lives that the people in your district live, and these everyday problems and discussions are more important than this game of like red versus
like
blue.
Game of Thrones.
I think the biggest problem, though, Kelvin, and this is something that the state legislature is able to do. I think having elections with the bigger elections completely dilutes the messaging that kind of the smaller, I guess politicians and congressmen, right, the aspiring congressmen have. I'd be very curious to look at the data of within the district. The 60 on the last election, the 60,000 that voted Republican versus the 30,000 that voted Democrats. I'm fairly certain those same 60,000 that voted Republican all the way.
Oh, for sure.
And those 30,000 voted, for Kamala, all the way. So I think when you have, and it's important, right? Local politics is important because, there are things that do impact us daily, but having those connected to the larger elections, there's to your point, there's no necessity to have a messaging, have proper ethics and morals. You're going to get away with it because the party funds the top person, and that just kind of gets funneled down to where even if you have no policy and you attach yourself to a certain party, you're going to win or lose because the party as entirely wins or loses. Yeah. So I don't know if this is something that the state legislature is able to do, where move around elections to where it's not. But out of all the policies, I think that would make the biggest impact, because then any of these other messaging that you have will actually be heard by people.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. And we do that for like mayor and city council.
Right,
those
exactly.
are in May.
Yeah.
I don't know what the turnout on those is.
Yeah.
It's probably not super high, but
and I'm certain like the 100,000 that voted. If you were to separate, there aren't going to be 100,000 that are voting.
No. You make a good point. You do. I think that's very valid. That's something that we should look into. I do think that the state legislature can do that if they want to, because we have control of how we administer our elections. Right. Every state does. And to a certain degree, obviously you have to vote for president when it's time to vote for president. But in terms of how we administer elections broadly, I'm sure we have some leeway to do that if we want to. Otherwise, ranked choice voting wouldn't be something that we could accomplish. Right. That's something to think about.
Yeah.
I like it.
Cool. Well, I feel like we, had a good session here. Are there things that maybe we didn't ask you, or topics that you're interested in kind of talking to really close us off here?
To close us out, I would want to show just how corrupt my opponent is. So if you want to type in Transparency USA for me.
Okay. Transparency.
We're gonna call people out here now.
I'm all for it.
This is the T. This is the T, people.
This is the Kendrick
That's
Drake,
right.
Drake
exactly.
beef.
Yeah. So go down a little bit.
So what is this website first?
So this is a website where you can see who is donating to politicians. especially at the state level. So at the federal level, we have this thing called the FEC, and you can go on there and see who donated to Donald Trump or Brandon Gill or any of that. But at the state level, that information is not as easy to find. But this organization collects that data, gives us nice little reports on who's donating. So if you go to Texas, we can start with Jared, and let's work our way up to our governor so you can see how corrupt that guy is.
So, Greg Abbott.
Yeah, look at that, $91 million in contributions. And I'll tell you right now that the first $25 million of that came from just 10 people. So here's the question. If the governor is taking this much money from people, some of which don't even live in Texas, who do you think he's working for?
The people giving him the money. But
Correct.
then what is he doing with the money as well? That's the other
Well,
part.
some of it he spends on, obviously, like media, because that's expensive. Getting his, he's getting ready for his reelection campaign in 26 too. He'll be on the ballot, so he'll be spending a lot of money on traveling around the state, hotels, commercials, events and such. But he also spent quite a bit of money to get Republicans elected in the last cycle that are going to help him do his bidding, specifically on that school choice. But then if you want to go up to the search bar, we can look up Jared Patterson, and I'll show you Texas Sands and all those good people he's taking money from.
And how do you spell?
He's right there. Patterson, Patt. Oh, he had popped up there.
Is it
for us.
JAROD?
No, you have it right. Jared. And then, there he's the second option there. So you're going to go to the top right there where it says contributions.
Click on it or?
Yeah, click on it. No, underneath. I'm sorry. There's like that gray bar there. Contribution. That'll show you. Okay, so he took $32,000 from Frank Pinedo. And when
As
you
an
look up,
individual.
yeah, when you look up that guy, he's like a real estate developer type.
Got it.
So here's the way it works right now. This is we didn't really get to talk about campaign finance reform all too much during our session. That's one of my 4 really important things. Right now in the state of Texas, any individual, any corporate PAC, any special interest group can spend unlimited amounts of money to buy our politicians. So the way I want you guys to think about this is these people are literally on the market. They're taking bribes, essentially. This is legalized bribery is what it is. Even at the federal level, there are limits to what someone can spend. Here in Texas, no limits. If you want to give somebody 32 G's, you're going to give them 32 G's. And guess what? When that phone rings, you picking up to Mr. Frank Pinedo, right? So if you look through this, if you want to go to page 2, so Black Ridge Consulting.
There's Texas Sands right there.
Texas Sands, $9,000. What do you think that's for, people?
Dang, so you're telling me Dumont paid this Jared guy instead of Luca? That's what he did?
Yes.
Wow.
Fans.
I'm sure you would have paid Luca $9,000
Wow,
too.
you
It'd
guys
be
want
good.
to blame? You want to blame Nico, but it's really Jared.
I
who
mean,
you should be
he
blaming.
took $32,000 from this Frank guy. He took $25,000 from Toyota. Right, so if something is going to happen in our district that's going to negatively impact Toyota and maybe benefit the people, who is he going to look out for? He's not looking out for us. He's looking after his big donors. And if you go to the next page, all you're going to see is a series of $2,000, $3,000 donations from every corporate PAC and special interest group that you can find. Texas Railway Company, the Chickasaw Nation. I mean, the Beer Alliance of Texas.
Well, that's interesting. The Chickasaw Nation.
They donate to all Republicans, it looks like.
So is
So
that
sand and
how's he getting it from both? How's he getting it both ways?
Maybe they can. Hey, listen, if we legalize gambling, they can both get a casino.
Oh, that is true.
You know what I'm saying?
What is your stance on legalizing gambling in Texas?
I haven't looked into it enough to know. I mean, I've seen a couple arguments to say like, oh, when you legalize gambling, there's a lot of negative impacts on, people and stuff like that. But I'm very conservative when it comes to like people have to have choices. So I'd have to look at the data. I have to look at the arguments on both sides of the aisle. But from what I've seen so far, right, and don't like hold me to task on making a decision on this today without much information, but what I've seen so far, the argument is that it's just not good for the people, so we're not going to do it. I don't know if that's a great argument as a government, right, because if the people decide they want it, then they want it. But again, I don't think.
But are the people deciding, or
Well,
Or
that's,
isn't it? There's a layer of trying to protect people from themselves because gambling.
It's exactly-
Is a very,
So if
It's
these
exactly what it is.
corporations and entities want to donate to your campaign just because they agree with your stance on certain
I
topics,
won't be taking it
You
from
won't
them.
take it.
So what? Can we look you up?
You can. I don't have any donations yet. The first filing period hasn't happened yet, so I may not be on here yet. I have filed with the TEC, but I'm pretty confident.
If we see Texas Sands on here under your name, $20,000.
Hey, check me out. If you see Texas Sands
They
on
pay
there,
for the Uber to the office.
if you see Texas Sands on there, it's news to me, my man, because
it doesn't look like
I'm gonna be
you're
like, where'd the check go?
Yeah.
You guys reporting that you gave me money? I didn't get any money. But no, one of the stances that I've taken is I won't take corporate PAC money. Now, if there are people that are in alignment with these PACs that want to donate to me individually, I don't mind that. But I think the moment you start to introduce this corporate PAC money to your campaign, your perspective starts to change. You start to take on more of a corporate identity, and you start to, want to do things that benefit the benefactors. And the only benefactors that I want are the people that actually live in my district. And I don't ever want to have a conflict where it's like I can either choose to help this corporation increase their bottom line, or I can choose to do something that's for the people. Because what'll happen is,
So you can track their contributions, but you could also track their expenditure, so you can see how they're spending.
yeah,
their
I don't know
money.
how this guy gave $500,000 to B1 Bank. Like, he's raised
200,000 as an investment to Edward
Can you
Jones.
can you go back to the previous screen there
56,000.
with the graph?
It's
There were
36 to himself. I don't get, where does this
Yeah.
is the money meant to help the people, or how did
the money
I'm
is meant.
curious
So-
to understand how they're spending this money. Like,
So
why?
what I think he probably did, what it looks like to me, is probably took out some loans and then relied on all this corporate PAC money to pay off those loans after he'd won the election. So he's probably kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul a little bit. That's the only thing I could really say, I think. But I mean, look, this guy spent $10,000 on Hilton hotels and resorts. And all of these individuals are likely going to be either other people that are running for office that he's trying to help out, or they're going to be consultants. There's like a whole there's a whole economy based on political campaigns.
Interesting.
Right, there's consultants for everything. There's consultants for social media. There's consultants for image. There's consultants for policy. So he's probably got a team around him that's deep in the pockets of all of these special interests. But I mean, when you can just call up Frank and get $30,000, I mean,
It's
shit,
insane.
man.
Can you,
That's
go, can you
insane.
go to the
Well,
overview page real quick? Like
And,
on the
so I do want to kind of speak to Jared here. Jared,
So here, right? Like if you look at his financial activity, he's spending way more money than what he's raised. Is that what you're talking about? Because technically, if you look at that's his expenditure. If he's spending so much money compared to what he's raising, is the difference his own money? Is he getting a loan? or?
He could be, but you got to remember, these guys are regular guys like you and me. Like,
Yeah.
when you go to the U.S. House of Representatives, you make about $175 a year, right? When you sign up to do this in Austin, there's not a huge financial incentive. You get like $7,000 a year, plus $200 a day per diem while you're in session. So, I mean, I think the total is like $36,000. I don't know how he's going to make up this money. I'm by no means a forensic accountant, but I can look at who he's taking money from and say, that seems shisty, bro. And trust me, when we go look at Greg, we go look at old Governor Gray, you guys are going to be real upset about that.
well, it gets bigger and messier, obviously.
horrible.
So I do want to, Jared Patterson, I do want to see about, obviously we're speaking to Kelvin today, but we do have a little bit of influence in the North Dallas in your district. Have you on as well to kind of talk through some of the stuff and give us an understanding of how this works from your angle and kind of what you're running on. Because I think, honestly, Jared would speak to a lot of the people who follow our page who live in this district as well, just like Kelvin. Again, Kelvin reached out to us and was interested in being on, and we've loved having him on and letting him kind of speak his truth. But we want to do open it up to you as well, Jared, to see kind of the other side and kind of hear you and what you have to say. So
Yeah.
I mean, we'd love to have both of you guys here at certain
oh, yeah,
point,
let's
you
do
know.
that.
Damn,
Yeah,
that'd be
let's
sweet.
do that.
to
Yeah,
record a
that'd be
debate.
sweet.
Yeah, we'll
or
get
like
some
a little
some
local-
bouncers on on each
Oh,
side
yeah,
just in
we don't-
case.
we don't
No,
need
You
that'd be
know,
sweet.
the-
We need to do that. We want you back on for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
At
come
some
back.
point.
I'll come
At
back.
some
Yeah,
Hey,
for
listen,
sure.
if he agrees to it, I'd absolutely love to talk to him.
I'd love to get him on first, and
Yeah.
then for the second time have you on potentially. Because is it really the race between you and him, or who's the Democrat? Is he a Democrat or
He's a Republican.
Republican.
Last cycle, there was a woman named Hava Johnson, I think was her name, that ran against him. Here's the thing. In Denton County, the Democrats are usually just trying to find anybody they can throw in there, right? I mean, Ernest... the guy that ran for District 26 after I dropped out, the story that I heard is like he was at a meeting. He was like, why don't we have anybody who's running after I left the race? And they were like, how about you run? He was like, all right. So like they don't have a strong ground game. And again, it's nothing personal against anybody that works. I think they have some fine people that work over there, but I think they're in a district that's gerrymandered, and they're not focused on the right stuff. They're focused on this culture war issue, LGBTQ plus abortion rights. They thought those were the two things that were going to carry them into the election and actually win this thing. And to me, that's insane. You know what I mean? Like, not that those are unimportant issues, but out of everything that we could be talking about to try to earn support in a district that's already conservative, what you're going to focus on is the things that conservatives hate the most. No, focus on the economics and try to make a case for why these things are actually more conservative than you would say. Because right now we have a president who is lifting the debt ceiling, right? Conservatives, truthfully, based on what Donald Trump's doing right now, should be pissed. And you have some that are pissed, like Thomas
What was
Massey.
it? We added $4 trillion in deficit
Yeah.
in the past.
Yeah, I mean, listen, here's the problem. When you raise or when you cut taxes, what do? You reduce revenues, which means we have additional debt. That's just the way it's going to work. Now, the hope is that he can balance that with some, economic boom and so on and so forth. But it's all kind of speculative at this point. They don't know. I mean, tariffs, there's big conversations about tariffs and all these other things, not to get off on a tangent, but in Denton County, they don't have a strong bench of people that are ready to run. And again, based on my conversations with them, they're not serious about winning elections in Texas. There were still some that were talking to me about like the Second Amendment. And I'm like, you think you're going to ban guns in Texas? Come on. Let's just be for real here. I'm a soldier.
Yeah.
You think I don't have guns? We're not banning guns. Now, are there things we can do on guns? Sure. We shouldn't be so partisan that we can't look at facts and just say, hey, a majority of these school shooters are under 21. Maybe let's raise the age to 21. I mean, there's a lot of different things that I've heard floated around that could be palatable to even conservative people, but you're not even making those cases. You're taking your talking points from Washington, D.C., and what do those people know about Texas? Nothing.
I think oftentimes a lot of the messaging gets presented in a way where it's one way or the other.
Exactly.
Right? Where, we've kind of gone away from this, let's find a common ground and look at this issue from that perspective. And I think that's also what's causing a lot of frustration for most people. And personally for me is, you're forced to be on one side or the other side. And unfortunately, the political climate is such that I don't agree with either sides.
Right. And you know what the best thing is? The best thing is, based on recent polling, 51% of the country agrees with me. 51% of the country already identifies as politically independent. Now, the challenge for people that are independent like myself is to give people viable candidates, right? That's the challenge. How can we be viable? And it really takes one person to break the threshold, to show people that it can be done. And that's hopefully what I can do is break that threshold, show them that even in a Republican district, if you're talking to people, having real conversations, being a real human being, maybe, just maybe, people will take that chance and do something different. Because right now, people are kind of scared with their vote. They're like, well, if I give my vote to you, it's thrown away. I could get somebody that I really don't want. Or we could all get together, decide that, hey, we want to do something different, and then show the rest of Texas what it's like. I mean, Texas is all about independence. Right? That's the whole idea of Texas. That courses through our veins here. So it's like, how is it that we have to pick between a binary choice of two totally corrupt parties when there are people out here that actually want to do what's right for the people? So I agree with you totally. And I'm in the same boat. I don't agree with either party. I think they both go too far on too many things. And there's no incentive to work together, because in elections, the way that they're structured now, it's like, no, I can just get off on bashing that guy for 45 minutes in every speech that I do. I mean, even now, but Donald Trump is the president. And every time he goes on, he talks about how Joe Biden was asleep at the wheel and this would have never happened under me. And it's okay. Like, I get it. That doesn't bother me at all. But I think our politics too often is me versus you, and not enough of how can I represent the people the best, right? We're trying to push our own agendas. Yeah. But
I think that was a really, really good message, strong message. And, it was definitely great, having you on the podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys.
We're very happy you reached out and we had this productive discussion. I think, any questions you guys have?
No, I really enjoyed it. I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thanks.
That was fun.
Yeah, I never thought like I would spend talking. I think people our age don't like in our social circles, we don't talk politics that much anyway.
Really?
So it's, I think this will be really interesting.
And I do think it is a good place for people to start with politics, is better understanding their local politics,
Yeah.
and then kind of working your way up from there, because again, it gets super toxic the other way around. And there's so much more nuance and understanding your local politicians and policies and the things that you're essentially paying taxes for. Kelvin did a good job of coming here, standing on business, speaking his truth, and kind of sharing, the direction and motivation of where his interests, are. And so we're excited to continue this conversation. For people listening in the comment section, share feedback, talk about things maybe you wanted to hear, other questions. We could always, continue this conversation if you guys are interested in it, if there's things that we didn't cover. But I think
we'll definitely love to have you, back here again in the future as your campaign
get
kind of
closer
progresses.
to election time, right? Get
Yeah.
closer to election season. So
I think we'll also continue to, hopefully the efforts you're making and the exposure to the local elections, continues to increase.
Yeah, you guys gave me some good ideas. I'm about to learn cricket. I'm about to learn cricket,
Imagine
and I'm
the
gonna
first-
play.
the first video you post after this. It's just with
Hey
the
guys,
bat
listen. Went on
your
the Foreign
backyard.
Exchange podcast.
you might even get Dinesh D'Souza's vote if you get good enough at cricket.
I don't think so.
But we'll wrap up there. That was episode 8 of our podcast. Follow us on all of our social medias. The same usual. We will put your social
Thank you.
media, on the description of our
appreciate
videos. But we appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you guys on the next one. See ya.
Thanks, guys.